Everybody, it's really lovely to be here. Thank you so much for zooming in today. I really appreciate it. And I always welcome the opportunity to talk about Hope for Wildlife and let people know what we're all about. And I was particularly intrigued when I was asked to talk about black bears. So I'm really thrilled with the topic. I'm going to talk about 5 minutes, just a little bit about the history of Hope for Wildlife for those people that aren't aware of what we do and why we do it. And then we'll move right over to the black bear topic. Okay. So our mission at Hope for Wildlife is connecting people to wildlife in a positive way through knowledge and understanding. And this mission has served me well over the years. Whenever I have an ethical dilemma or a question that needs answering, I'll often go back and the mission statement will help me answer it. If you could put a picture or a photo to a mission statement, this is what I would choose. It really speaks volumes when you look at the look on that little girl's face. Here, about 10 years ago, I received a call from a young lady that supervised a naturalist group, and she asked me to come and speak. So I took all the information down, and I was about ready to hang up the phone when she said, we've met before." And I said, "Oh, really? Where have we met?" And it turned out after chatting with her, it was the little girl in this photo. So I think for everybody here today, it's important to keep in mind that sharing your passions, whether it be with art or music or sports, it's always a good opportunity. You should always share because you never know what a huge or wonderful impact you might have on somebody's thinking and growing up and what they'll become. This is a photo of what Hope for Wildlife looked like when I purchased it. It's just out in Seaforth, just past Lawrencetown Beach. And this is sort of what we have become today. We've done a lot of work over the years to grow with the demand of what's needed to help injured and orphaned wildlife in Nova Scotia. We have bobcat units, we have marine units for otters and beavers and seals and seabirds. We have whitetail deer holding spots, a little bit of everything. We have ICU and a place for all the young babies to grow up. So as our needs grow, so does our facility. I think one of the biggest things that we've done that's been a huge improvement over the last 30 years is creating a wildlife rehabilitation hospital right on site. And we are inspected by the Nova Scotia Veterinary Medical Association, just like a dog or cat hospital would be. And during COVID, we got really, really busy and we created three more triage vet clinics, one in Cape Breton, close to the causeway, one on the South Shore, close to Bridgewater, and one in the valley, really close to Wolfville. And we are also planning on opening one up not far from Truro in a little place called Camptown. So that will help service the Pictou area and be able to get those animals in. They're just able to stabilize them quicker, warm them up, give them fluids, give them pain meds, oxygen, whatever they need so that they are stable for the rest of the trip into Hope for Wildlife Society. This is Dr. Michaela. Since it's International Women's Day, she is a great example of someone that has a passion and followed her heart. She joined us as a volunteer, actually as an intern back in 2012, and we continued to have her work for us each and every summer after that as she was going through veterinary school. And then she went out into the real world and did veterinary medicine and small animal practices for a few years. And then we placed an ad looking for a full-time year-round vet, and she applied. We were just thrilled to have her. And the job of a veterinarian in a wildlife world is quite different. She sees over 7,000 patients every year, over 300 different species, and lots of orthopedic surgery. So her skills and her learning is great, and we're just thrilled to have her. Also, another wonderful woman is Dr. Sherry Cox, and her helper Karen there. And her dream is to have wildlife hospitals across Canada in every province. We were actually the first that she signed on to oversee and train our doctors. She's actually here today putting on a talk for us up in our bear cave. And yeah, she's following her dream, and she's got 4 provinces covered so far. 3 important goals at Hope for Wildlife: education, they're all equally important, but I always start with education because I just feel it facilitates change in a really big way. We've always gone into the school systems. We go about 3 times a week, senior homes and everything in between. But I've always wanted to be part of the curriculum, and that dream became a reality this past 2025. And we submitted 7 lesson plans for grade 4. And it went over really, really well. And now we're working on grade 6 lesson plans for the next year coming. So I think it's incredibly important to have that education factor in our systems on nature and wildlife and what's happening right here in Nova Scotia. The second goal is the rehabilitation work itself, which most everybody is more aware of than anything else. And again, lots of patients, about 60 to 65% of them are birds, and then we get mammals and some reptiles and amphibians and a little bit of everything in our day-to-day life. We see wildlife for all kinds of different reasons, but when you boil it down, most everything is because of human-animal conflicts. And our top 3 is really hit by cars, domestic animals go out and injure a wild animal and it comes into us, and window strikes. We see a lot of them, but we see a lot of wildlife tied up in garbage, wildlife that's been shot, poisoned, oiled, stuck in green bins. And during the spring and summer, when there's lots of construction happening, we get a lot of orphaned wildlife for that reason too. And the third component, which many people may not be aware that we do, is research. And I never dreamed it would become as prevalent as it has. We have people from all over the world that want to look into our data banks because we have so much data there and study it and try and see trends. And they can tie their research into climate change and all kinds of wonderful things. For example, we were the first to find avian influenza in Nova Scotia back in 2022, came in a goose. And it was sent to PEI as positive for avian flu. They sent it to Winnipeg, and it came back tested for the highly pathogenic strain, the H5N1 virus. We were also the first to find it in fox pups. So it did that jump from birds to mammals. The difference is in birds, it presents as upper respiratory. In mammals, it attacks the brain and shows more seizuring type behaviors. In birds, they always die from it. But in mammals, we had 4 pups come in, fox pups, and we were able to nurse 2 of those through with supportive care. And the interesting thing with that is we were able to take the blood on the ones that recovered, and it showed that they were building up antibodies against the virus. So really good data for government, for farmers, for community. It lets us be aware of what's happening in our natural world. And just on an off note, we have opened the first ever Turtle Trauma Center in Nova Scotia. We finished that in August of last year. And within those 2 or 3 short months left of good weather last year, we had over 150 turtles come in. So if you ever see a turtle in distress, do give us a call. And Dr. Michaela is super good at putting them back together again. Most of what we get in on turtles is hit by cars. So the reason we're all here today, of course, is to talk about bears and a little bit about their ecosystem. And as a lot of you probably heard, we've been trying forever to be able to rehabilitate black bears. And it's come to be that we are going to be able to if we can meet all the standards that DNR requires. So it's sort of a step-by-step process, but all the drawings have gone in, getting quotes on pricing, fundraising is happening. And if we get an early spring, I really think as long as DNR stamps those plans, we'll be able to go full steam ahead in the spring and get the unit built. I do want to mention when we talk about black bears or any really wildlife in Nova Scotia, something I always like to draw people's attention to, when you look at all the provinces in Canada and you compare populations to land mass, including water, and divide that out, there's 2 provinces that really stand out, and that's Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. And we're the provinces that have to keep in mind, we're a small province, so we need to learn to live comfortably with our natural world. They say there's roads every 1.8 kilometers on average in Nova Scotia, and I believe it just because of the sheer numbers of hit by cars we get. So we are the community, so to speak, that we need to show more kindness, understanding, and willingness to adapt to living with nature. We have the hardest job, but we'll do it. And another thing I really like, and we actually have, I think, three in Nova Scotia now, is when we build bridges for wildlife to pass or underpasses so they can get across these busy highways without getting hit. I think it's incredibly important. It's one of the best things we can do for nature. You know, when you're going down the highway and you see a fence line, that's really great if those fence lines take the wildlife to a bridge or an underpass, because the last thing you want to do is create pockets of wildlife that's trapped. And because they're going to interbreed, they're going to overpopulate. If disease comes in, they can be totally wiped out. So we need to let nature be able to move around in our province. I put this photo in just because I found it very interesting. I was doing a talk on coyotes, and these are roll bars, and they're meant to for homeowners that maybe don't want wildlife in their yard to put out, because when a wild animal is climbing over, even if it's a chain link, and they hit that roll bar, they slide right off and can't get into the yard. You can make your own. You can just use a drain pipe or something like that on a bar, and they work really, really well for keeping, perhaps you have a small dog that you let run out into your yard, keeping him contained and protected. So I just want to talk a little bit about our natural world and the natural history of black bear. In November, December, that's when the black bear go into their dens usually if they have enough fat stored and if the winter is shutting in. So they go into their dens in November, December. They usually give birth in January or February, and they'll have 1 to 5 babies. And when they're born, they're less than a pound. So that's really, really tiny, eyes closed, very, very small. Their eyes open in about 4 to 6 weeks. So guess what? That's right around now. So all the bears in the dens right now, their youngsters are starting to open their beautiful blue eyes. And then in April or May, depending on our winter, that the babies are about 6 pounds at that point. And mom will wake up and she'll come out and bring her babies with her. Moms only give birth every other year. So these babies stay with their mom for 18 months until they're equipped to be on their own. And, you know, adult full-grown bears can be anywhere, a huge range, anywhere from 100 to 500 pounds. But seeing a 500-pound bear is very, very rare. So they're usually around the 250 mark. The females are a lot smaller than the males. And they can live in the wild, they say 18, 20 years, possibly. In captivity, it's always longer, maybe up to 30 years and such. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the myths and the facts about black bear. I just want to get rid of, I got this little thing up there, good. So a lot of people wonder, do they hibernate? So it's really quite interesting in Nova Scotia or for the black bear. They don't hibernate in the sense that our groundhogs and our bats do. So they don't go into the coma state. They do more what's called torpor. So just a light sleep, a good strong sleep. They know the more they sleep, the less fat they burn and the more energy they'll have when they wake up. When they give birth, they're awake. They don't sleep through that whole process. So they wake up, they give birth, they are great moms. They take care of their young, they get them nursing, and then they go back to sleep. So it's sort of a bit of a wake time there too. A lot of people think that when they wake up, they are aggressive and they're starving. But actually, the research shows different. When they wake up, they're hungry. There's no doubt about that. But they're more interested in the easy food. So their diet when they wake up is like simple things like grass and leaves and maybe an animal that's passed away. They might eat carry a dead meat. And they are drawn to smells of food. So if you had your bird feeder out all winter, it's a really good time to put it in because the bears can smell that feeder. So it's always good habits to get that feeder in. During this time, they try to take in about 5,000 calories a day, but the time they really want to eat is the late fall to bulk up for their sleep. And they can take in 20,000 calories a day then. So pretty amazing, really. And I think the other thing that's so incredibly interesting is what they eat. So, a lot of people don't realize this. It's insects, it's nests, it's nuts, it's acorns, grasses and berries, dead meat and small rodents, and they might even pick up the odd frog and that kind of thing. So it's not the kind of diet that you would think in the wild world for such a large animal. It's really quite amazing when you think about it. Um, Another thing that people often think is that bears growl and they bare their teeth. In the movies, they do, but in real life, they really don't. They go through things like teeth clacking, jaw popping. They stomp their front paws. They give low moans. That's their vocalization. They drool when they're nervous, and they huff. I've heard a bear huff at a park once. It was pretty cool. So these are nervous signs that when you see them, they're kind of warning signs. I kind of equate it to like a skunk when they stomp their feet. They'll give you several warnings before they actually spray you. So they're like, why isn't that person listening to me? I'm telling them to go away. And same as the bear, they give these warning signs for you to watch and understand. The only thing is sometimes they're misunderstood. The other thing is a lot of people think when they're standing on their hind legs and upwards that that is a sign that they're going to attack. Again, this is not true. They stand up for really three reasons. One is to get a better look around. Their vision is about equal to a human's, although night vision is better. They're also standing up to hear things better, to be able to hear better. Their hearing is about double what ours is. So when we're walking through the woods and if we break a twig, they're going to hear that and they're going to be out of there. So that's why you hardly ever see the black bears. They're very elusive. And the other reason is they're up on their hinds to smell the air. Their sense of smell is the most amazing thing. It's like 2,000 times that of a human. So you can just imagine. I've read data that says if you're having a barbecue and the wind is just right, a black bear can smell that food from a mile to 20 miles away. That's pretty amazing ability that they have. Another thing that you hear a lot is and I used to believe this, and I think there is some truth to it for sure, but the mother bear is more dangerous when they have young. But again, it's the research shows that the moms are so good and they communicate very well with their cubs and they teach their cubs immediately from coming out to go to the trees when she tells them to go to the tops of the trees and they listen to her. So if she suspects danger or feels, a human comes into the picture, she will send her cubs to the treetops. And when she's out looking for food, she'll often send her cubs to the treetops for safety and then she'll come back and gather them. So again, of course, there's always circumstance where you could get in trouble if you meet a mom bear with her cub, but usually she's heard you long before that and she's got them to safety. So a lot of people are surprised, and when we talk about apex predators, because how can an omnivore be considered an apex predator? However, their apex predators conjure up images that aren't favorable in a lot of cases. But really, apex predators are incredibly important to our ecosystem. And whatever is incredibly important to our ecosystem makes us healthier and gives us a better quality of life too. Black bears, they're considered that even though, and an apex predator is really an animal that doesn't have a lot of natural predators. And when you look at what would take out a black bear, they don't exist in Nova Scotia like grizzlies and wolves and mountain lions. So their only predator is really humans. And that's how most of our black bears perish. Somebody's shot them or somebody's hit them. So they're an interesting mix. And to put it in perspective, a lot of people worry about being hurt by a black bear. You're more likely to be killed by bee stings or lightning than a bear. So it's just interesting data how we've come to fear them, and we really need to come to understand them. Um, So they're incredibly important for our ecosystem. Don't ever underestimate what they give to us. So number one, they maintain our forest health. Think of it. They eat berries and grasses, and they redistribute thousands of seeds from what they eat in their scat all over the forest. Their whole territory is replanted by them. So it's really super amazing that they can do that. Also, because they're a big animal and because they forage a lot, because they rip apart a lot of dead tree trunks and all that kind of thing to get their insects and food, they are sort of helping with the decomposition and they're aiding the nutrients to get into our forest floor by ripping them apart. And they're just helping that process along to be a little bit quicker. So that's pretty amazing too. They often strip bark off trees, and that provides little nesty holes for birds or smaller mammals. So that's a good thing too. They also help manage populations, you know, such as like Canada geese. Now, they wouldn't go after the goose probably, but they would go after the eggs. So, sometimes I get calls every year. I get hundreds of calls from people saying, there's too many geese on my lawn and what can I do about it? And I'm more than happy to give advice on little tricks that you can do. But the same people or the neighbors might call in the fall and say, I have some apex predators in my yard and I don't want them here. What can I do? So it's funny how there's a disconnect. The apex predators help control the rodents, they help control huge numbers of geese and all that kind of thing. So it's really important to consider those connections. One thing I find fascinating about black bears is they're almost always in negative energy balance. So when you think about their life, they're hardly ever getting enough calories to sustain them almost their whole life, except for like 3 or so months when they're bulking up to go into their torpor. So I don't know many critters like that in all the ones that we see that are basically trying to live off their fat stores for most of their life. So it's an interesting thing and it makes them very, very unique. One thing I always try and stress is, going into nature and enjoying it comes with responsibility. And in everything we do in life, and I think we sort of forget and feel entitled sometimes that we could just do whatever we want whenever we want to. But it does come with a price and it does come with a responsibility. If we're going to get our groceries, for example, we will make sure that we have gas in our car, we're insured. We hop in our car and we usually have to have our wallet to pay for the food and our list of what we want to get. So everything in life requires preparation and responsibility. So the same should be the same when you're going into the woods. So I always recommend to people take a walking stick. It's important. It can help you and it can help if you get into a situation. Take some spray. It never hurts to have it and understand how it works quickly if you need it. I always recommend a whistle because you never know for all kinds of reasons you may want to alert, and it can often scare a predator away. What I don't recommend is listening to your radio with earbuds in when you're going through the woods. You need to be aware of what you're stepping into and what's going on around you. So I don't recommend that. I do recommend keeping a couple rocks or pebbles in your pocket because say you run into something, you can distract them by throwing that pebble over to the side. Their attention is going to move away from you and onto the noise that they heard. Also, when you're going to the woods, make sure your food is really well sealed. Just one Ziploc baggie isn't going to do it. We just talked about how well bears can smell. So you don't want to be attracting the wildlife to you. The majority of attack incidences could be reduced or prevented through modification in human behavior. So what not to do if you come up close to a coyote or a black bear in the woods, do not run. It will trigger the chase response in these apex predators. So do not run, even though that's what your brain is telling you to do. And don't play dead. Don't fall down on the ground and pretend you're not there because they know you are there. So what we recommend is just making yourself big and a movement and walk back slowly. And this is a good time to throw your pebble if you have them. You can talk softly, don't scream or holler, but just you can edge yourself out, and that usually always works. Um, if you're going to the woods with your dog, be sure to keep him on a leash. A 4-foot lead is perfect. Don't use those flex leads or that kind of thing because the animal can get out of control. The dog can get, and it never ends well for the wildlife or the dog or you. So it is important to keep your dogs under control when heading into the forest. And oftentimes, government or community will put up signs to alert you. So, check for those before you head in and think about the time that you're going into the woods. A lot of animals become very active at dawn and dusk. So try and avoid those times. I know the owls, they're out hunting at dawn and dusk and they may swoop you if you're a runner and want to run through the woods. So try and avoid those times for nature. And then how to prevent conflicts in your own home. If bears are going through your backyard, the number one thing is almost all of the things I'm going to chat about are food related. So don't ever feed a bear. People do, believe it or not, they do. And don't store your garbage outside if at all possible. Wait until pickup day to put that garbage out on the curb. Remove your feeders, as we talked about, as soon as they wake up. The birds don't really need the extra help in the summer, so get those feeders down in the spring. If you have pets, don't feed them outside. Bears love dog and cat food. So do a lot of critters. So you'd be better to move that food inside and clean your barbecue after every use. I know that's kind of a pain, but that way the smell won't be lingering. Um, the other thing is educate your neighbors. You might be doing everything perfectly, but you might have rats and you might have coyotes and you might have bears going through. And it could be that a neighbor isn't following the same standards of care that you are. So you can politely and engage in these conversations, in a neighborhood group, because not everybody understands that when I get chickens, guess what? I'm going to have rats and I'm going to have bobcats and I'm going to have a whole bunch of other things come through that community. Um, Bears have amazing memories. So, for example, apparently in some of the busy parks that have bears and people, the bears have learned how to open the door handles on cars. So guess what? They get in there and they find all kinds of treats. So, just a simple thing that we can do if we're going for a walk in the woods, make sure we lock our car doors because a bear may figure that out. Once bears figure it out, they'll do it time and time again. And then sadly, it's going to be killed because people won't tolerate that. So a fed bear is a dead bear, really. So keeping your food under control is really, really important. A little bit about the rehab end of things. So a lot of people say, well, how do you rehab bears if they don't get imprinted or tame or wanting to approach a human? And in all honesty, it's not what you think. Imprinting usually only ever happens when the eyes are closed on the animal. So think about it. They're in with mom in a den when their eyes are closed. So humans hardly ever come into contact with a bear cub. It's usually way after their eyes are open and they're moving about. They're already learnt and have that basic instinct taught to them by mom. So it never really happens. What we do like to see happen when we're rehabbing bears is have more than one cub because, and not so much that we're worried he'll get tame, but that we're worried about his quality of life. Every living thing needs something. And so if there's not another bear cub for it to play with and have enrichment with and be with, it can be rough on a single bear cub. So that is something that we hope if we get one, we hope we get two, sort of thing. But imprinting, in our experience at a wildlife rehab center, we haven't seen imprinting that many times. And it's always, if we follow it back, we find a person that's gotten it when its eyes was still closed and cared for it. Maybe they didn't know rehab existed and they've kept it for 3 or 4 weeks and hand fed it through that eyes closed stage. We have a bobcat in, and it was found a little bit after I spent 2 years trying to wild it up that it had been hand raised by dropper feeding for its full eyes closed period. And the other thing a lot of people ask, like, is a rehab bear more dangerous to the public? So that is something obviously we want to know. And there's been studies done that if they've been reared with minimal human contact through a rehab facility, which they would be, their survival rate is similar to that of a regular bear, and their conflicts with humans is about the same. So not much difference one way or the other. And it's good to have those documented scientific papers published. So that's a little bit about black bears, and I hope you've learned maybe a little bit about them and how amazing they are. And I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions. I'd be more than welcome to answer them.
Thank you so much, Hope. That was awesome. I learned a lot.
Good.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or send a question in the chat and I can read it aloud.
Maybe we can get folks to like virtually raise your hand or just stick your hand up in the screen and we can go through you that way. I can start us off if you want, Hope.
Great.
I'm wondering if, because organizations like yours are so important, not just for the direct wildlife rehab, but as you mentioned, you're also playing a key role in wildlife monitoring and ongoing research that's supporting preventative conservation measures. So with everything that's going on, not just provincially, but federally right now, where we're seeing cuts to programs, including wildlife conservation, are you anticipating gaps in government or maybe stemming from government cuts that are going to affect the work that you're doing? And if so, are you thinking about ways of filling those gaps already? Like, how can Nova Scotians help? Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good question. It is sad to see some of the things that are happening globally and certainly in our province too. And the price of things certainly affects. We've always been a charity that's lived off of donations and not government money or government funding. So we're really hoping that that will continue on. It's been wonderful. Thank you everybody that supports Hope for Wildlife. But I can see a time where it will slow down a bit with as prices increase, as gas goes up. We cover the whole province in picking up injured and orphan wild animals and getting them in for treatment. And I'm a little worried, people do that out of the goodness of their heart, and they usually bring them to us. Sometimes we go pick up, but we do reimburse people for their gas money. So it can add up. So that part worries me a bit. I do worry, with the loss of certain jobs that have happened just recently in DNR. I worry that there'll be big gaps in our species at risk plans for our province, the protection of habitats, that kind of thing. So it is a time for the people to really speak up. And if they see something, we might need to take steps to make government more aware of what's happening in our natural world. I have to say, in the last 3 years, my relationship with DNR has been so good. So I was very disappointed to see Andrew Boyne is no longer with the department. He really helped with this black bear happening. And, so did Arcadia Film and so did Community. Community alone stepped up when they were going to do another bear hunt, so much, and it was all done quite well, like through education. People were talking about, well, can they tell if it's a female or can they tell if it's a male if they shoot it and all that kind of stuff. So lots of education happened. And that's because community came together and discussed it. And it made a difference. The bear hunt didn't happen. So and plus, I really think it opened the door to making people aware we're the only province in Canada that did not allow black bear rehab. So I think that helped a lot too. So the voice of the people is ever so important, as we know.
A follow-up question to that. I know that the work that DNR was planning to track tagged bears has been delayed. That, of course, would have been really useful information for your work to see what's going on long term in a bear's life after they've been released. If that is delayed, I guess, what are your thoughts on that next step? And if it doesn't happen, how do we make it happen?
I think as soon as I get up and going, I would, and I hate collars. I really worry that it impedes their ability to live a normal life. It impedes, they may get caught or tangled or they may grow, you know, but there's a lot better things out there now. So I would love with the blessing of government to be able to put trackers on all my bear cubs. And I don't even mind like fundraising to be able to make that happen, to track that data. I think it would be super important. Sometimes people would say, oh, we have too many bears, but we don't know. It's so hard to count bears because they move, they have such large territories. So by tracking and getting some of that information, I think it's incredibly important, and I really want to do it. So I'm hoping to do some investigation on what kind of tagging system might be simple, and the price is dropping on the ability to do this kind of work.
Are you talking about like microchips or something rather than
I
collars?
know in the bird world, there's small little trackers. They do
Oh,
fall off. They only last 3 months or so.
mhm.
So there are things, and every day there's new science out there on ways. So who knows? But checking into it, researching it, seeing what we can come up with. What is the rest of the world doing? I think there's things a little bit better than the big collars, although the black bears seem to tolerate them quite well. Yeah, but it would be something that I'll definitely dive into now that I'm sort of in that world.
Mm, okay. All right, let's go to our chat first. Well, I've got a question from Nicole about being allowed to rehab coyotes and adult black bears. Any thoughts on that? They are rehabbed currently in Ontario.
Well, I guess I look at it this way. My life's work is, well, there's many parts to it, but one of my big dreams and desires is to be able to rehab all Indigenous wildlife of Nova Scotia. I think the government's job should be to set the bar and make sure people meet those standards so that we're doing a good job, that we're giving the medical care, we're giving the enrichment, we're doing it right. But I don't think the government's job should be to say, yes, you can or no, you can't, if those standards are met. I think it's incredibly important. We have high standards. So in my dreams and what I've strived to do for the last 30 years or 35 is to get permission to rehab all Indigenous wildlife. It's all equally important. We need it all for a healthy ecosystem. So I couldn't agree more that it should all be cared for in the same way. I think it's a mistake we make as a society, not caring about the stuff that's plentiful. If we cared about it all, we'd have a healthier ecosystem and we'd have less endangered species because it's all connected. So yes, I would love to be able to do it all. And I work hard every day to try and get permission to do it all. And we've made headway. We never used to be able to do white-tailed deer. We could do them now. We never used to be able to do bobcat. We can do them now. We never used to be able to do black bear. So remaining on the list are moose, adult deer, and coyotes. And I'd love to be able to do coyotes.
Kim is wondering about the timeline for the new rehab facility. I guess if I could broaden that question, are you seeing, because I imagine you have kind of like a stage-based plan for building, and you're still fundraising. So could you tell us maybe a little bit about what's coming first or what that plan is, and if there are gaps in there that you're hoping donations are going to come in to fill, where should people be helping you?
So right now we've secured 100 acres of land. We're not supposed to say where. It's in Cape Breton and it's good to keep it aloof so, no one goes to check it out. It's got to be remote. It's got to be quiet. So we've got the land. That's step one. Number two, in the fall of last year, we went and cut lines on basically where we thought we would want the caging unit. We've designed the caging unit. We've done a lot of the research, working with DNR and other rehabs from all over, mainly from Ontario, and to design the perfect cage that will be like freedom, full of trees, full of natural things, so that when they do go to freedom, it won't be this big shock to their system. So I'm really excited about that. It's all drawn out. Right now, we're at the stage where it's into to contractors to quote on a price, and we're getting those prices in, and then DNR will have to sign off on it. But I'm really hoping if we get an early spring, that we will be digging the trenches and putting in the holding units, and that maybe by summer we'll be rehabilitating our first bear cubs ever, legally.
And where are you right now with your fundraising goals?
I think we're doing really well. Thank you, everybody. I think we're a quarter of the way there, and we've got a few irons in the fire of people that are thinking about, stepping in and maybe sponsoring. Not only do we need the caged areas, we need to create pools for enrichment for them to swim in and all that kind of thing. But we also need an area where we set up our medical department, and where when the cubs come in, they're really, really tiny, so you can't put them out into a great big cage. So they start in kind of nursery type settings. So we've got to get that all drawn up and planned. And we've got a couple of foundations that might be interested in helping with that part of it. But it is expensive, but it's going to last forever. It's going to last a lifetime. It's going to be well cared for. So I really think it's worth the initial investment and time, and it will be there for a long, long time.
Dan's wondering if you could talk more about proper food storage when you're out, and how like plastic bags might not be good enough. So
Big
what's
enough.
the best?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anything's good enough when it comes to bears, but I know if people are camping out, they put a barrel up into trees and hang it up that way. But the bears still have to smell that. I don't, if it's sealed that, really, really well, don't leave anything behind. Make sure you take everything out of the woods with you. And if you're just going for a day hike, leave your food behind in your car, lock your car, and you can have your snacks when you get back. There's no sense carrying food into the woods if you don't need to. It just added risk and added chance for something to go wrong. So again, our behavior can dictate the well-being. So a lot of common sense and just practical things. But I don't even know if you triple Ziploc bagged food if bears would still smell it. Maybe someone in the group knows better than I do.
I think it might be probably more a matter too of just acknowledging that the bear probably does know that you're there, and then acting appropriately if you happen to run into one.
Yeah. And
Good question.
I often say, like, travel with a friend and chat as you go through the woods, and just them making them aware. It's when you startle them that you might get into trouble, that they didn't hear you coming. So go with a friend, chat a little bit, and that way if they have time to move out of your way.
We have a question all the way from Tennessee.
Oh,
Thanks
wow.
for joining us. Where your show is airing. That's great. Um, our question is if you have advice to give people here wanting to learn more, but who can't find hands-on experience locally. We're also wondering about a common practice, apparently, unfortunately, which is to kill animals that have become pests. They've mentioned raccoons in attics. And if you have any thoughts on how to change that culture around just, yeah.
It's a thing here. A lot of people still will go out and shoot that bobcat or that bear that they don't want close to them. Um, the first part of the question was, how to get rehab perhaps started in your area. And there's two important sources: the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. That's actually this weekend we're putting on training for 30 staff to get their certification. And then there's the National Wildlife Rehabilitation Association. So those two groups are really all you need to know. They offer classes, they offer training, they prepare you to go into that world to be able to help wildlife in the proper ways. So that's step number one. If you Google wildlife rehab in your closest town, there might be something there that you're not even aware of that can help. And that's another avenue. It might already exist. It's just a matter of investigating and maybe offering to volunteer. And then as far as convincing people to live comfortably with nature, that's my whole life's work. And it's not easy, and it's easy. I can see why people might get discouraged. But I still spend, for 35 years, I spent every single day. I work 7 days a week on the phones. I don't do it all myself, no, but I answer the phones every day. And it's questions like, what do I do? And it's educating yourself to know what to tell people. Sometimes people don't really want to destroy the animal, and some people don't understand the impact that's going to have. So I spend my most time educating, especially about raccoons. Like if there's a raccoon in your attic, people will destroy it. And that's why we get 900 baby raccoons in every year. So my job is to convince people to do the preventative work so these conflicts don't happen to begin with. And it's not easy. It's one by one. And I can see improvement, like white-tailed deer, for example. People didn't know that mom will go in and feed them and leave, and then come back at dusk, go in and feed them again and leave. And that's because she keeps her fawn so clean that the predators can't smell them. So it's safer for the fawn to be alone. And that message, it's taken 30 years, but is getting out to Nova Scotians, and they understand it. It's not just me, it's everybody that's educating in that respect. So I can see it being the same for all species. So we just got to keep on keeping on.
I wonder, Hope, because we got a question from so far away, if you have any thoughts about where, and also just acknowledging that, as you mentioned, we know so little about black bears in Nova Scotia because predators are really difficult to get good monitoring information for. Do you have any thoughts on a jurisdiction in North America where black bears are that is doing either the monitoring piece or the rehab piece really well?
Absolutely. I've been able to work with, well, not actually physically work with, but spend time with and gain knowledge from Bear With Us in Ontario. And they do hundreds of black bear cubs. They have a very good relationship with their government. Um, they have so much knowledge, a lot. Like he knows 10 times what I know. His name is Mike. I forget his last name. I'm good at first names, but I'm really bad at last names. But it's Bear With Us. Check out his white website. Him and his wife run that facility, and all they do is black bears. And they have so much knowledge. And they even offer they've already helped me tremendously with my drawings and my plans. And they will continue to help me. If I said, come on down, we got our first bear cub in, I know they would come.
Brian's wondering if you're going to be using the same model as the rehab center you visited in British Columbia for the center in Cape Breton.
Um, some of the things, absolutely. But I would love to be able to do a more natural setting. And so my model is like a 16-foot fence, 12 feet out of the ground and 4 feet fed underneath the road so that you can drive around it in case you have an emergency. But so that they can't get out, and there'll be metal on the top. But inside will be the forest. So they'll be able to climb trees, keep it obviously a good distance from the fence line, but so that their habitat will be very similar to what they're going to move into. And a lot of rehabs, in all honesty, don't have that luxury of having that much forest land to be able to do something like that. But I'm excited to do that, and everybody has different methods and different ways of doing things, and different budgets and different availability of land, really.
Lindsay's wondering, what would you say to the folks who are concerned that DNR is finally allowing black bear rehab in Nova Scotia, and that it's a trade-off for bringing back the proposed spring bear hunt proposal? You touch on that.
I hope not. I really hope not. I did worry about that, and I thought, oh gosh, if I am in some way harming the black bear by getting the right to rehab them, I would be devastated. Um, I really hope that they won't. And I think there's enough pressure on if communities speak out enough about it. I find usually things people are opposed to, they'll speak up more than if they think it's a good idea. I don't know why that is with human nature. And it's just good discussion. And there's so many reasons why there shouldn't be a spring hunt, in my opinion, that I think it's good discussion. And I found, I learned a lot through that whole thing, and I really hope that they're not connected, and that's not the reason. that I am allowed to rehab black bears so that they can put in a spring hunt. I really hope not.
Uh, are there plans to rehab adult bears as well?
In my world, I take one step at a time. And in my mind, I want to be able to rehab all Indigenous wildlife of Nova Scotia. It just makes sense if I can meet the standards. And I would like to think there'd be a day. Dr. Sherry Cox, who works very closely with us, she's here right now. She spends most of her time traveling all over Ontario, working with the adult black bear. And I've gotten to go with her a few times. And what I thought would be really scary and difficult, she makes look so easy. She has her tranquilizer gun. She knows what she's doing. She's trained us in the use of tranquilizing guns. And, it's an interesting world. And if you're taught by the best, you can do it very, very well. So I could see no reason right now. Government is only talking about the cubs, but I'll take what I can get and I'm happy to have it. And it's a starting point. Everything in my life has just been bit by bit and take each step as it's handed to me as we try and try and try and never give up.
Inspiring hope. Thank you. We have a turtle question.
Oh, good.
Kim's wondering, what do you do when you find a dead turtle? I know that there are folks in Ontario who will collect eggs from dead turtles. Any thoughts on that? Turtles are also so new.
Turtles don't ever think it's dead, number one. So when you come across a turtle that's been hit by a car and it's all broken in a lot of pieces, and you think there's no way that turtle's alive, bring it to us. Because they are the most amazing creatures on the earth. Like I've looked at so many turtles I thought were dead. And they weren't. We hook up the Doppler, we listen, we hear the heartbeat, and Dr. Michaela can get all those pieces back together again. So don't ever assume, always bring it in. We used to be able to harvest the turtle eggs and hatch them. We had great success, and we used to incubate a lot of eggs. And that's another thing I'm working very hard to change. A new ruling went in that they said, no, we don't want you doing that anymore. But we're very anxious to get that reinstated, especially now with our beautiful new turtle trauma center. We were hatching out hundreds of turtle eggs, and each one was very well marked. We knew exactly where they came from, so we could put them back. I got to visit the Peterborough Turtle Trauma Center. I thought the tour that they were going to give me would take an hour. I was there like 2.5 hours, and I still hadn't seen everything yet, but it's truly amazing. And I got a lot of good ideas. The path I was on and what I was designing, once I left there, I scrapped that and I totally rethought how to do the Turtle Trauma Center here in Nova Scotia. So yeah, there's still a lot of ground to cover there too that I'm working hard to try and get change on.
Sounds like you probably already rely on and need a lot of help. So if there's anyone in our audience or in our network that we can direct to you in other ways other than, I mean, we're going to tell everyone to go donate, but where should we send people if they want to help you in other ways on any of these animals or issues?
There's so many possibilities, as you know, in any charity, so many ways to help. So if you go to our website and just click on Join Us, a gentleman, and fill out a little form, it's very easy. A gentleman named Ian will give you a call and explain all the possibilities. You can help us on the road, you can help us in-house, you can help us from your home. There's there's just hundreds of things that need to be done. So by all means, click on that link and get started and get to know us. And we'd just be thrilled to have each and every one of you.
And because so many Nature Nova Scotia followers and supporters are core naturalists, the mega nerds amongst the nature community, do you have any recommendations for other groups or researchers or anyone that we should be following if we're interested in bear ecology, bear rehab? Any book recommendations or anything else you think we should check out?
No, interesting. Um, like you say, there's not a lot happening on that front in our province, but certainly books. I have way too many. Maybe joining some groups like Ontario Bear With Us, and just to get your head around what's happening there. They have a lot. I think they have a lot of videos, a lot of good data stuff there that may expand our knowledge and understanding of these animals. There's just so many ways, but reaching out to other rehabs all over the world to gather knowledge and joining the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. They come out with beautiful books every month. They're electronic now, of course, but and all different topics. Many of them are on black bears and research projects that have been done, so that can give you really good data. The National Wildlife Center, Dr. Sherry Cox runs, just Google her name and it will pop up. A lot of her work is with black bears, and she knows a ton about black bears, especially when you get into the medical end of them. So there are opportunities out there.
Thanks. Marina, have I missed any questions? We have a lot of comments just thanking you, Hope, for your
Yeah.
presentation and everything that you do.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. It really does.
All right, well, if you're not seeing anything I've missed, Marina, then we'll let you go, Hope. But yeah, thank you again so much for being here and for everything that you're doing.
So much, and thanks for having me. It was fun. This is my first time I've talked on black bears, so
Oh, great. Oh, we're so
too
honored.
much data. uh,
Well, hopefully in maybe a year's time, we'll be able to have you back and learn about what's going on like, on the ground with bear rehab. That would be awesome. And
that
maybe
would
by then we'll have more like monitoring data too on the provincial side. One can dream.
exactly. That would be
Yeah.
really, really, yeah.
Okay, folks. Well, you can expect a follow-up email from us with, if everything worked okay on our recording, with a link to that recording. We'll also make sure that goes up on our social media. So if you missed any part of the presentation, you can come back and watch. And we'll have some other reads and other things in there for you to check out about bears and all things wildlife conservation. Thank you for being here and happy Women's Day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Hope. Have a
Bye.
good one, everyone.
You too.
Bye bye.